2nd. We're going to go ahead and jump right into our ELA lesson for today. Let's go ahead and get started. So everybody flip open to page 11. We're going to be doing the Build, Reflect, Write activity. If you do not have a hard copy of the reading material, that's okay. Just go ahead and you can do this on a separate piece of paper. Again, it's not going to be collected, but it is going to be needed for you guys for when you guys are writing your weekly reflection at the end of the week. So you can see I have a very poorly drawn Venn diagram. But you guys have already obviously have yours already done. I just have mine on the big board so it's easier for you guys to see. So the directions say build knowledge. Compare and contrast the ancient civilizations of Greece and Egypt. How are they alike? How are they different? What do these civilizations have in common? So I think that this poses several really good questions. It's a way for us to be able to compare and contrast both the golden age of Greece from the golden age of Egypt. Like we were talking about earlier, the golden age of Greece, we're going to put similarities in the middle and then differences in the sides. So let's talk about timeline. The golden age of Greece was 500 to 300 BCE. And let me get the exact dates for Egypt. And then the golden age of Egypt was 1507 to 1340 BCE. So we can really see that let's see, if we calculate this is 200 years, about 245, give or take, for the Egypt. So it's kind of around that same 200-year point for the golden age per se. So let's talk about Greece first, and then we'll talk about Egypt, about these golden age periods. So what are some key points from Greece? What are some key points that made this era specifically the golden era? So we can talk about, what about architecture? We can say monuments. This is just underneath, so I can specify particularly for Greece, and I'm going to put statues. So these are the statues of the Greek gods and goddesses that were created and the monuments that went to surround and protect these great monuments so that the Greek civilians can go and worship and honor and give gifts to these statues in a way that's protected and cared for. We can also talk about art. What did they have key aspects for? Sculpting. So we can say sculpting and pottery. This was a really big aspect, particularly towards Greece, that was famous in this golden age of discovery and this golden age of Greece, were these huge 40-foot stone statues and marble statues that were created of these Greek gods and goddesses surrounding Greece, right? And this pottery that was created, they were talking about how these pottery that was created out of clay was a way for the civilians to give gifts to these Greek gods and goddesses as a way of them honoring them so that they in turn can protect them and provide protection, safety, and all of these aspects that the gods would be able to provide the Greek civilized civilians in return. What else can we say that was particularly towards Greece, right? We can say government. We learned that, I'm going to say democracy, that democracy was created in Athens, right? Athens was the founder of democracy for our world. And then we learned in Sparta how that militaristic state, that oligarchy was created where it focused on the military. They were the key rulers and the key government figures in Sparta. So that is a very key aspect towards Greece, and especially talked about in the Golden Age. But let's continue on. What's one more thing that we can say about the Golden Age of Greece? Let me grab our book so that we can reference something from here. We talked about the architecture. We talked about the art. Pottery, we talked about that. We can also talk about painting. We put that under art. What else is another key thing? Statues. Religion, that's a good one. Religion. In the text, it specifically states that religion was very important to the ancient Greeks because they built temples to honor gods and goddesses. So underneath here, I'm going to write honor gods / goddesses. Okay, so let's go ahead and jump over to Egypt, and then we'll talk about what they have in common. So let's see, what's a good thing that we can talk about for Egypt that we learned about specifically in this golden age? We can say architecture again. It is similar that they both share this, but they did have specific aspects of architecture. Whereas the Greeks built monuments and statues, the Egyptians built pyramids and tombs. So they did both have that architecture element, but however, they were different portions of it. What's another one we can talk about? Farming. This was a huge aspect during this golden age of Greece, right? The farmers was what made the food supply so plentiful, what made the Egyptian life able to flourish during this by providing the food for the kingdom. This was able for them to provide that key insight that was so crucial during this time frame. So that was a really important adaptation, advancement, productivity that was during this golden age. So if we look over here, we talk about art. Specifically, when we're talking about Egypt, they had several glasswork, which was jewelry. Oh, I spelled that wrong. Jewelry, glasswork, jewelry. Tile work. How we talked about how they provided tile for the pharaoh's floor of his palace, right? They would hand paint on these tiles that then they would hand install into the pharaoh's floor as a way to make sure that he was given this beautiful aspect. I think, let's see, do we have a government for them, right? They had their own form of government at the time, and we can say pharaoh and vizier, right? So let me make sure I spell this right. Vizier. So this was their form of government that was around during this time period that really transformed and helped them run and create during this time frame. And we can see the difference between how they had democracy and oligarchy for the Greeks, but in Egypt they had one sole ruler as the pharaoh, and then he had 4 or 5 key figures that he trusted to be able to enact certain beliefs and situations in the aspect of the kingdom and the different palaces. So if we then look at the middle, what they both share, let me use a different color for this. So they both share, we can say, painting. They both share pottery. Not just art, we can say building. We can say stonework. We can say focus on art. And we could say focus on, so we said focus on art. We could also turn this around and say they had a focus on not just discovery and creativity and preserving. They both had these huge statues, monuments, temples, pyramids built to protect and honor their gods that are in their everyday life. So that was another huge discovery on their part. Okay, so this kind of wraps up this activity. Now I'm going to talk about what you guys have that's going to be due this week for points. Okay, so I posted on Monday the weekly warm-ups. Those need to be turned in on Friday on Google Classroom by midnight, unless we have another prearranged system for me to collect those from you guys. On Friday, you have your weekly reflection. So it's going to be I have a Google Doc already set up that's been sent out to you, that's been assigned. It's going to go live today. That shares the assignment, and then you can just type directly on it and then post it back. It's really easy. However, so the assignment's going to be, you need to write a 3-paragraph response to the question that I introduced. So I talk about, I want you to compare and contrast the main difference in the art and the styles and the different aspects that were during the golden age of civilization before for both Greece and Egypt. So if I was doing this, I would suggest you can talk about 1 paragraph being compare the similarities between the golden age of Greece and the golden age of Egypt. The next paragraph being, so let me erase this portion of it. Actually, no, I can write it right here. So I would suggest writing paragraph 1. This symbol means paragraph. 1 being similarities. I ran out of room of both. And then I would do paragraph 2 being differences. And then paragraph 3, I think I talk about your thoughts. So kind of like a final wrap up. Remember that each paragraph has to be a minimum of 5 sentences. You can go above that, of course, but it has to be a minimum of 5 sentences, guys. So if we're counting just the minimum, you need to have a total of 15 sentences in this reflection if I go through and count. But please, 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 if you feel like you need to write more, I'm encouraging you to do that. Please feel free to write as much as you want. This is the minimum, though, for you to get full credit, okay? And so this is going to be, I'm giving you Thursday and Friday to work on your reflection. You will have to have it turned in on Google Classroom by 8 p.m., okay? for in order to have it turned in correctly. So you will have for the rest of the day today, which is Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, to complete these 3 paragraphs. Okay, guys. Good morning, guys. Welcome to Social Studies Lesson 3 for the week. This is week 1. We're going to go ahead and wrap up page 3 of the newspaper. Same system. I'm going to go ahead and read it first, and then we'll go ahead and talk about the main points. This one should be... So let me go ahead and get started. So where we left off, we're leaving off on the top of page 3. So, and it's continuing after the Thermopylae and Salamis war for the Persian War. Let's go ahead and start off on page 3. Athenian fleet pretended to retreat when the Persian ships followed them into a narrow waterway. The Athenians attacked. About 300 Persian ships were destroyed, while the Athenians only lost 40. A woman named Artemisia commanded one of the retreating Persian ships. Artemisia was the leader of a city named Halicarnassus. She was also one of Xerxes' most important allies. So we picked up where we left off yesterday on the Thermopylae and Salamis war. So we talked about how the Spartans led the war on the land and the Athenians led the war on the sea. So it talks about how the Athenians were able to use again their military strategies and outwit and conquer the Persians on the seafront. So the battle of Plateau in 479 BCE, Greece decided to attack the Persian army in Plateau. So from this point, this is the first time that Greece attacked the Persian army head on. Normally the Persians were the ones initiating the battle. Even though they were outnumbered, the Greek army won another victory. A few weeks later, Persia's fleet lost another major battle in Mycel. Many smaller battles were fought over the next 30 years. So if we look back at the very first battle of Marathon, it was going to be another 10 years before the next battle was fought. And then they're saying after the Battle of Plateau, it was another 30 years until the war ended. So this war was almost 50 years long without all of the battles. But Marathon, Salamis, and Plateau showed that the Greeks could fight and win against the greatest empire in the world, being Persia at the time, because they owned the most land. The Greek city-states led by Athens and Sparta had proved to be a powerful military force. Moving on to what is this week's question. What is the Antikythera mechanism is an artifact that kept the National Archaeological Museum in Athens in Greece. It's kept there. Sponge divers found it in 1900s near the island of Symi in the Aegean Sea. It is among many of the artifacts that divers found in the ancient Antikythera shipwreck. So it's talking about how in the Aegean Sea, thousands and thousands and thousands of feet below the surface, there is a shipwreck, and that's where they found this mechanism, which dates back to 65 BCE. Divers also found beautiful architects like jewelry, glassware, furniture, a throne, and bronze and marble statues, all beautifully preserved underwater because it was protected by the sand. So this lump of corroded metal was ignored for a long time. So it's talking about this mechanism that was found on the Antikythera shipwreck. This mechanism was ignored for a long time because there were such beautiful other artifacts that was found. And this eroded metal was kind of just ignored. However, it proved to be an amazing discovery. Recently, archaeologists decided to re-examine this strange-looking artifact and found a number of gears, circular scales, and Greek writing inside it. It is the first artifact of its kind ever found. Archaeologists believe the mechanism is a hand-wound clockwork device, which could calculate the movements of the sun, moon, and planets. Some scientists believe the instruments came from Syracuse, the home of famous scientist and mathematician Archimedes. It dates to the time that he lived. Was this instrument one of Archimedes' invention? The investigation continues. So it talks about how this amazing piece of metal that was a huge invention in Greek culture was preserved all of these years, thousands and thousands and thousands of years since the shipwreck in 65 BCE, was preserved by the sand, and when it was taken out of the water, the scientists can see the Greek writing inside the grooves and the metals, and you can see how even back then they had the technology to create clockwork and all of these things with gears and grooves and all of these things that could be manipulated, and it's incredible to see. I'm going to go to Greek alphabet next, and then hop up to the story up top. So, Greek alphabet. We know so much about the ancient Greeks because they loved to write things down. Greeks wrote down speeches, books, poems, and information about things like the Olympic Games and government. Around the 9th century BCE, the Greeks became the first Europeans to develop a writing system. They developed the system after contact with the Phoenicians, who developed the first alphabet. A famous Greek historian named Herodotus called the Greek writing system Phoenicia Grammata, or Phoenician letters. In the beginning, the Greeks copied the Phoenician idea of writing from right to left. Because of this, eventually they changed to ox turning. That means they wrote from right to left on one line, then reversed the writing and the next, switching the direction when they started each line. This was pretty confusing after a while, so they eventually switched to back to right to left. The Greek alphabet changed again after the people came in contact with the Romans. So it's kind of cool to be able to look at the Greek alphabet and how it was used in different aspects. So we're going to go back up to top to Persephone, a Greek myth. Again, we're going to talk about Greek mythology, I think, in one after next week. We're going to talk about Greek mythology. Greek mythology is really interesting. It's really creative. There's a lot to talk about, so that's going to be an exciting week. But this is just kind of an insight of what's to come. So, why do the seasons change and leaves fall off the trees? Why does the sun rise every day and set at night? Why is there an echo in a canyon? These are very few of many things ancient Greeks did not understand. They created stories or myths about gods and goddesses to help explain things they didn't understand. So here's the story about why they think that the seasons change and all of that in different parts of nature can change. One day, a beautiful young woman named Persephone went for a walk. Persephone's mother was Demeter, the goddess of growing things. She stopped to view her mother's beautiful flowers growing in the field. The ground opened up, and a man wearing a black helmet emerged. He aboard a black chariot pulled by black horses. This man was named Hades, fell in love with Persephone, and took her down with him to the land of the dead, which was also called Hades. Persephone became his bride. Hades was the brother of Zeus and the god of the underworld. When Demeter could not find her daughter, she was very sad. She learned from Hermes, the messenger of God, that her daughter had become queen of the dead. Demeter would never see Persephone again. In her misery, Demeter stopped growing things. Flowers wilted on their stems, crops stopped growing in fields, the earth looked bleak. People went hungry because there wasn't any food. Zeus had to do something. He demanded that his brother return Persephone to Demeter. Zeus made a deal with Persephone to spend part of the year with Hades and part of the year with her mother. When Persephone was home with her mother, Demeter was happy, and crops, flowers, and trees bloomed. When Persephone was returned to Hades, Demeter was sad and stopped growing things. Which event in nature did you think this myth was trying to explain? If you said the changing of the seasons, you'd be correct. Look outside your classroom window. Where do you think Persephone is today? So, I want you guys to look out your window at home and see, where do you guys think Persephone is today? What's happening in nature today? Are the flowers blooming or are they wilted? What's going on? Where do you think she is? So I think that's kind of a fun way to look at it. Let's go ahead and talk about our key points. So the first one we're going to talk about is the Antikythera mechanism. So it was found underwater, right? On a shipwreck. In when? 65 BCE. Let's see, what else does it say? It says it had a number of gears. / Greek writing inside. They said that it was used the movements, I'm going to say movements of the sun, moon, / planets. So if we look back, this mechanism that everyone thought was just an eroded piece of metal was ignored for thousands of years because it was surrounded by beautiful pieces of jewelry, glasswork, thrones, gold. And when someone decided to take a look at it, it became a crucial insight on the way that Greeks were able to create and include technology into their life, right? They had a number of gears which showed that they understood clockwork. It had Greek writing, which proved the point of them understanding writing and that it showed meaning. It also said they used it to calculate the movements of the sun and the moon and planets. All of these things show that they had such a wide knowledge of technology that it was fascinating, and it was able to be preserved underwater through the protection of the sand. So let's move on to Phoenicians. Phoenicians are not Greek, and they are not Greek. They're not part of the region of Greece, but they are important. They are the people. So they are the civilization. I'm going to put civilization who created the first alphabet. So that's really important. They created the very first alphabet in ancient civilizations. They really pushed the idea of writing things down and being able to share different aspects of their life for centuries and generations to follow. And through trade and exploration, this alphabet was shared with civilizations all over the world. And it was one of the most pivotal points in ancient civilizations because it was when they were able to document their daily life. So scientists and archaeologists and students and teachers today can share what people from different civilizations from thousands and thousands of years ago lived and discovered. It's an amazing accomplishment. It's an amazing achievement. So that's one of the main things that they're known for, being able to share that. So if we go to the next one, Phoenicia Grammata, they said that was the Greek writing system. That's what the Greek writing system was called. So I'm going to write Greek writing system name. system name. So through trade and exploration, the Phoenician alphabet was given to different civilizations, and then at that point, those civilizations transformed it and morphed it into their alphabet, which is what the Greeks did. But they still wanted to give credit where credit was due, and they named it after the Phoenicians. So in English, it's called, I think Phoenician letters. So I'm going to write Phoenician letters. So even though the Greeks transformed the alphabet and used different ways to share their thoughts, they still wanted to give credit to the reason why they even have the alphabet. So that's why they called it the Phoenician letters. Ox turning. When I see this word, it's kind of funny because it's the exact opposite of what I think it is. When you're looking at this, I would think it would have something to do with farming or transporting or something. In actuality, it's related to the alphabet. So what they were saying in the beginning, when the Greeks got the alphabet, they copied the idea of writing left to right, right? And then they decided, you know what? I'm going to change it. We want to make it a little bit differently. So they went, so I'm going to write here. So say this is line 1, this is line 2, this is line 3. Say they have this, they're writing a paper, or like on a scroll, line 1, line 2, line 3. So ox turning, they decided, you know what? We're going to make this different. We're going to make this specific to Greece. So they called it ox turning, and this is what it was. So line 1, they would start writing left to right. Then they would go line 2, they would write right to left. Then they would go to line 3, then they would switch back, left to right. And they would continue this the entire piece of paper or the entire piece of stone, anything they were writing on, they would continue this, and that pattern would follow, left to right to left. So it would be very confusing. Instead of following it like this, it would go like this. So instead of it going like how we see it when it goes like this, like, so say you're traveling, it would go like this, and then start back at the beginning, go back to the beginning, it would go like this. So you would go here, then you'd follow back like this. So it would be pretty confusing for people when archaeologists and people first discovered, and historians first discovered this. It was pretty confusing to learn what they meant. However, eventually they realized that it was confusing, so they stopped it. They dropped it and went strictly back to this, left to right, how we would normally read it. And then the alphabet changed again when they started trading with the Romans and discovered how they began writing. So it goes to show that it goes to show how with trade and with different contact with different civilizations, the technology that they had developed, it evolved, it changed over time to be more successful. So if we went to ox turning, we could say the first step they did for alphabet, exactly like the Phoenicians. So we're going to say exactly the same as Phoenicians. And I'm not going to write out the full Phoenicians, I'm just going to write phone. And then 2, then it changed to ox turning, right? Then it changed back to left to right. Then it changed again to Roman alphabet. So that's where it's at today. The Greek alphabet and the Roman alphabet merged to where the Greek alphabet is today. But you can kind of see on this timeline how it started when they first made contact with the Phoenicians. It started right here. Then it switched when they changed it to fit them. Then it switched again. And then it switched again to where it is current. So I'm going to write current. I'm going to write today underneath this. So it's just fascinating to see all of these different aspects of how the alphabet and how cultures and stuff change to fit the needs of the civilization at that time in particular. Okay, let's go ahead and move back up to the top. Persephone. So Persephone is Hades' wife. So this top part right here, I'm going to draw like a little like this. This is Greek mythology. And it's kind of like a taste of what's to come in after next week. When we really dive in to see who's who and who's what, right? So Persephone is Hades' wife. And she is the daughter of Demeter. She's the daughter of Demeter, who is the god of growing things, the goddess of growing things. So the story goes that Hades came up one day and said, Persephone, you have to come with me, who Hades is the god of the underworld, right? And she said, you have to come with me, you have to live with me. And then Demeter, the mom, got so sad she stopped growing things. So Zeus was like, we have to do something about this. So he made a deal with Hades where she would spend half of her life, half of the year, with him, and then half of the year with her mom. And this was the only way that they can prevent a war between Zeus and Hades, right? So that they had to do this. This was the only way that they could prevent this. So this was the deal that they were able to come up with. And they were saying how the Greeks, when they encountered something in daily life that they didn't understand, they would create these stories. And that's how Greek mythology was developed, right? And so they would create these stories, and they were saying that when the changing of the seasons happened, they didn't understand why it was happening. So they created this story about how Demeter, the goddess of growing things, would half the year when the daughter was there would be in full bloom. She would be growing, everything would be beautiful, it would be sunny. But when she was gone, it would transition into a time of when everything was bare, nothing was happening. So when you look at it, it kind of looks like, it's like the yin and yang sign, right? So if I were to draw a circle, so this is 1 year, and half of the time, right? So we could say this is summer, and then this side is winter, right? Because summer has all the flowers, everything's in bloom, everything's beautiful, she's happy, and then in winter, when everything in fall happens and all of the trees lose the leaves and everything drops, she's sad. So it's kind of interesting to see how these stories that they made make sense with nature, right? It goes to show how intelligent and how creative the ancient Greeks were. When looking at Hermes, he is the god of messaging. So he, in ancient mythology, he is the only one besides Hades to travel from Earth or the world to the underworld. So he's the only one to travel from both of them. He sends messages to the underworld and back up. So he's the only one who can travel between the worlds besides Hades. So it's really cool how in the realm of mythology, people have to go through him to get to Hades and so forth. So he is kind of an important god to be able to connect both realms. But it's just a fun way to look into it, kind of a taste to see what's to come with Greek mythology after next week. So that concludes our page 3. So typically, I would have you guys do page 4 and turn it into me. However, it's going to be a little bit changed. So on Google Classroom today, on Wednesday, you will receive 2 assignments. One will be the assessment. You are allowed to use the newspaper. So you can use the newspaper on the assessment. And then you will have to do, so you're going to do that as one assignment. And then you will do the think and review questions and the let's write. That's it. Do not create a Google Docs for this assignment. I have already created it for you. All you need to do is go to the assignment that says think and review, page 4, Studies Weekly, page 4, I think I titled it. And the Google Doc has the questions and everything already on it. All you do is type your answers directly on it and then turn it in. Make sense? So you guys don't have to do anything. Click on everything. I've already prepared everything for you. All you do is click on it, type your answers directly on there, and then turn it in. Cool? And then that will wrap up social studies for this week.